My son's fiancée was planning to steal everything and leave him facing federal prosecutors. I stood at that rehearsal dinner with 60 witnesses, watching evidence in my pocket, recordings on my phone, FBI agents outside waiting for my signal. She'd marked him expendable in her payment spreadsheet. Cover story only. 0%. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Because when Selene invited me to give the blessing speech, she handed me the microphone for her own destruction. But let me start 3 weeks earlier, when I first realized something was wrong. This story doesn't begin easily, but I'm grateful you're here to hear it. Before we continue, if you could leave a comment, have you ever needed to protect someone from a betrayal they couldn't see coming? Your experiences might help others more than you know. One last thing. Some details have been fictionalized for privacy and emphasis, but the core truth remains. My son lost everything between midnight and breakfast, and I knew immediately it wasn't an accident. At 59, I'd learned in 2 decades of Army intelligence work that the most dangerous attacks came in silence. The ones you didn't hear were the ones that destroyed you. That Thursday morning in May started the way most mornings did in my Fairfax County home, pre-dawn quiet, coffee brewing, the kind of peace you earn after surviving careers that teach you what chaos actually costs. Then Ronan crashed down the stairs at 6:10. My son was 31. Normally obsessed with maintaining his luxury real estate agent image, pressed suits, Italian leather, the kind of presentation that screamed success whether you had it or not. But that morning, he came down in bare feet and pajama pants, phone clutched in a shaking hand, face drained of color in a way that flipped every protective instinct I had. "Dad, it's all gone. Everything. I don't understand." I set down my coffee. "Show me the timestamps. When did each account hit 0? He thrust the phone at me like it was contaminated. I scrolled through his banking app, first checking account, 0. Savings, 0. Investment portfolio, 0. Cryptocurrency wallet, 0. Even the wedding fund he'd been building for 3 years, gone. Every number that had represented his financial life now read like a death certificate. "Between 11:45 last night and midnight," he said, voice cracking. "I was at the party. How is this possible?" The party. The rehearsal celebration at the Potomac Riverside Resort. I'd skipped it. Too much family chaos. Too many people I didn't know crowding around my son's upcoming marriage to a woman I'd met exactly 4 times. Selene, the art consultant with the perfect smile and the vague family wealth nobody ever quite explained. I pulled up transaction histories on each account. The timestamps lined up with surgical precision. 11:47 p.m., 11:51 p.m., 11:58 p.m., 12:03 a.m. Someone had moved through his financial life like a demolition crew, methodical and devastating. This wasn't a hacker stumbling onto your password, son. Then what was it? Someone who knew exactly which accounts existed, which apps you use, and when you'd be distracted. Ronan sank into the kitchen chair across from me, and I watched him process what I was saying. His hands were still shaking. 20 years tracking terrorist financing had taught me one thing. Money doesn't vanish by accident. It gets moved with intent, with planning, with inside knowledge that turns trust into a weapon. I opened my laptop and pulled his phone data through the forensic software I'd kept from my intelligence days. Most fathers didn't have military-grade analysis tools in their home office. Most fathers hadn't spent 2 decades hunting people who weaponized financial systems. The pattern emerged within minutes. All transactions originated from the same IP address. All executed within an 18-minute window. All targeting accounts that required 2-factor authentication, meaning whoever did this had access to Ronan's phone, his passwords, and his physical authentication codes simultaneously. That wasn't random theft. That was coordination. "You said you were at the party when this happened," I said, keeping my voice level even as my pulse kicked up. "Who had access to your phone?" Nobody. I mean, it was in my jacket pocket most of the night. I put it down once or twice, too. He stopped. I watched comprehension spread across his face like poison. I had spent 2 decades hunting people who stole in the dark, and now someone had made my son their target. The question wasn't random anymore. The question was deliberate. Who had the knowledge, the access, and the timing to execute this kind of precision strike? I pulled up the IP access logs and cross-referenced them against the geolocation data. My jaw tightened as the results loaded. Every fraudulent transaction had originated from the same Wi-Fi network, the wedding venue's private guest network. The one they'd set up specifically for family and wedding party. The one with the password Ronan had shared only with people he trusted. Someone at that celebration, someone who'd smiled and toasted his future, had systematically destroyed him while he celebrated. The betrayal came from inside the wedding circle. The phone buzzed at 6:45, and Ronan grabbed it like a drowning man reaching for a rope. I was still processing the Wi-Fi logs someone at that party had systematically destroyed my son's life, when his face went from panic to something worse, hope draining into devastation. "It's from Solène," he whispered. Voice message. He hit speaker before I could suggest privacy. Maybe he needed witness to whatever came next. Maybe he already knew it wouldn't be good. Solène Riddle's voice filled my kitchen with the measured tone of someone reading from a script. She was 29, an art consultant with gallery connections, and, until that moment, she'd been my son's fiancée, the woman he'd planned to marry in 36 hours. "Ronan, I've been thinking about this all night," the recording said, each word carefully paced. "I can't marry someone without a stable financial foundation. This isn't the partnership I signed up for. I need someone who can provide security. And clearly that's not something you're capable of maintaining. I'm sorry, but I'm ending our engagement. Don't try to contact me. I need space to process this." Click. The message ended with the finality of a door slamming. Ronan stood frozen, phone still extended like an offering to a god who'd rejected it. Then his legs buckled, and he sank back into the kitchen chair, head in his hands. "She's gone. She actually left me. Dad, what do I do?" I should have comforted him, should have put a hand on his shoulder and said something about how he'd survive this, how time would help, how he deserved better. But something in that message tripped every alarm I'd learned to trust in 20 years of intelligence work. "Let me hear that message again, son." He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Why, you heard her. She's done. Just play it." He did. I listened past the words this time, focusing on delivery. The breathing patterns were too controlled, too measured. No catch in her voice, no hesitation, no emotion bleeding through despite the content. This was performance, not heartbreak. "Again," I said. Third replay. I closed my eyes and isolated the audio environment. Slight echo, hard surfaces, high ceiling. Not the intimate acoustics of a bedroom or home. Public space, hotel lobby, maybe, or an airport terminal. "This wasn't recorded in a moment of emotion," I said. "Listen to her breathing patterns." "What does that matter? She's done with me." It matters because people don't rehearse breakups unless the planned the reason. Ronan stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language, but I'd interrogated enough liars to know the difference between pain and performance. Solène's message had the cadence of corporate HR delivering a termination, professional distance-prepared language. Zero authentic emotion. She hadn't called him honey, baby, any of the intimate names couples use, even in anger. She'd called him Ronan. Formal as a business memo. Partnership. Stable financial foundation. Not capable of maintaining. These weren't the words of a woman whose heart was breaking. These were the words of someone executing a script. I played it a 4th time. 5th. 6th. Ronan had stopped protesting. Just sat there with his head in his hands while I dissected his fiancée's voice message like it was intercepted enemy communications, which I was increasingly certain it was. On the seventh replay, I caught it. Background noise, barely audible beneath her words. The distinct rumble and click of wheeled luggage rolling across hard tile flooring. Not carpet, not wood. The specific acoustics of airport or hotel lobby surfaces. I pulled the phone closer, isolated that section, played it back 3 more times to be sure. There, clear as a signature. Luggage wheels, rolling, moving. She'd recorded this message while already in motion, packed bags in tow, not sitting in her apartment processing the shocking news of his financial collapse, not calling from bed at dawn. Heartbroken and confused. She'd been ready to leave, packed, prepared, possibly before the accounts were even drained. My son heard a woman he loved ending their future. I heard an operative executing a timed extraction. This wasn't a reaction to his financial devastation. This was the exit strategy that came after it. She'd packed before the theft even happened. That meant timeline, coordination, extraction plan. This wasn't crime of opportunity. This was military precision applied to civilian destruction. And I needed to understand the battlefield before I could counterattack. The marble lobby of the Georgetown private bank felt like a mausoleum for money, and I walked in hunting for the crime scene. Patricia Brennan met me in a discreet consultation room on the 3rd floor, manila folders already arranged on the polished table. She'd handled the Hampton family accounts for 15 years, long enough to read the expression I wore now and understand this wasn't a social visit. "I pulled everything the moment I got your call," she said, sliding the folders toward me. "The activity pattern is unusual enough that it triggered our fraud detection, but by the time the system flagged it, the transfers had already cleared." "Walk me through the structure," I said. "Which accounts were hit?" "The wedding account your son opened in February. Most of the transfers originated there. Over $2 million moved in the first wave. Joint account with his fiancée. Correct. Dual ownership, but individual transaction authority up to $50,000 per transfer. Standard setup for couples managing wedding expenses. Florist, venue, catering. Vendors won't wait for both signatures." I felt the mechanism click into place. The wedding account wasn't just convenient planning. It was engineered access. Ronan had handed Solène the keys to $2 million, wrapped in ribbons and romance, thinking he was building a partnership. "Show me the authorization trail." Patricia opened her laptop and rotated it toward me. Transaction logs filled the screen, each line a surgical strike. 50,000 to an LLC I didn't recognize. Another 50 to a numbered account. 47 transfers in 18 minutes. Each one dancing just under the individual authority limit. "These all required biometric authorization from your son's registered device," Patricia said. "Fingerprint and PIN combination. Our system logged it as legitimate because the credentials match. Financial predators don't break down doors. They get handed the keys with a smile and a signature." "What's the timestamp on the first authorization?" She scrolled to the beginning of the sequence. 11:47 p.m., May 6th. I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. I'd skipped the rehearsal party, but Ronan had sent me photos throughout the evening, proof his old man was missing the celebration. I found the timestamp cluster around 11:30, 11:45. There, 11:47 p.m. exactly. Ronan stood on a small stage, microphone in one hand, champagne glass in the other. Mid-sentence, in what looked like a toast. His face was flushed with happiness, and probably 3 drinks. Behind him, 200 guests watched and smiled. His jacket hung on the back of his chair at the family table, clearly visible in the frame. He was giving a speech in front of 200 people at that exact minute, I said, turning the phone so Patricia could see. Then someone else had access to his device or login credentials. Not or, had. Someone physically possessed his phone or had cloned his biometric access. Patricia's expression tightened. That's not random theft. That's insider operation, coordinated. Someone who knew his schedule, his account structure, and the exact window of opportunity. I scrolled through more photos. The family table sat closest to the stage. Solène was there, visible in the background of one shot, smiling at Ronan as he gave his toast. Her cousin Carmela, the wedding planner. 3 of Ronan's college friends. 2 of Solène's gallery colleagues. My son thought he was building a life. Someone else was building an extraction route. Can you trace the destination accounts? I asked. Already requested. Most went to offshore holdings, Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, places with banking privacy laws. We'll need federal subpoenas to crack those. How long? Weeks. Maybe months. I looked back at the photo of Ronan giving his toast. Both hands visible. Phone in his jacket pocket behind him. Someone at that table had reached into his coat while he performed for the crowd. Someone close enough to touch his jacket without raising suspicion. Someone who'd sat at the family table and smiled while executing their invasion. The thief sat at the family table during the toast. Someone who sat at that table knew exactly when my son would be vulnerable, which pocket held his phone, and how long they had before he'd notice. That level of operational awareness didn't come from luck. It came from training. I called the one person who could trace digital ghosts while merging onto I-66 toward Arlington. Kingsley Lockwood answered on the first ring. "Vernon, I've been running traces since you texted me at 0600. This wasn't improvised. Kingsley was 48, had served under me in Army cyber intelligence, and now ran a private financial forensics firm that did work for 3-letter agencies when they needed someone who understood how. Criminals weaponized banking systems. If anyone could reconstruct the architecture of this attack, it was him. How far back does it go? I asked, watching the highway mile markers blur past. First probe hit your son's accounts 3 weeks ago. Small amounts. Testing security response times. $47 here, $89 there. Each transaction was designed to map his account structure without triggering fraud alerts. 3 weeks. This wasn't opportunity crime. This was campaign planning. Someone had spent nearly a month studying my son's financial ecosystem before executing the kill shot. "I'm 20 minutes from your office," I said. "Pull everything. I want transaction logs, IP addresses, device signatures, everything." Already queued up. You need to see this in person. Kingsley's office occupied the 3rd floor of an Arlington building that looked like generic corporate space, but had security that would make embassies jealous. He met me at the door with a tablet in one hand and coffee in the other, the kind of efficiency that came from 2 decades of intelligence work where minutes mattered. Inside, 3 monitors displayed forensic data that looked like archaeological layers, each screen showing a different stratum of the attack. Transaction timelines, IP geolocation maps, authentication logs. "Walk me through it," I said. Kingsley pulled up the earliest anomaly. April 17th, $47 charge to a vendor that doesn't exist. Transaction authorized, cleared, then refunded 3 days later, to your son. It looked like a processing error. To us, it's a probe. He scrolled forward. April 24th, $89, same pattern. May 1st, $103, each one testing a different account, different authentication protocol, different security threshold. Military intelligence taught me one thing. Amateurs react, professionals prepare, and predators rehearse. These weren't random attempts, Kingsley continued. Each probe gave them architectural intel. How fast do alerts trigger? Which accounts have 2-factor authentication? What's the maximum transfer limit before human review? They were building a blueprint of his entire financial ecosystem. I stared at the timeline. 12 separate test transactions over 3 weeks. Each one surgical, precise, designed to extract information without raising alarm. This was tradecraft. Someone with training, or someone working with professionals who had it. The IP addresses, I said. Where did they originate? Kingsley pulled up a geolocation map. Red dots clustered around DC and Northern Virginia. Wedding venue. Solène's apartment building. The gallery where she works. And your son's home. 4 different occasions when she had access to his devices. She'd sat at my table, held my son's hand, and run penetration tests on our family's finances between dinner courses. One of these test dates might interest you, Kingsley said, highlighting the April 17th transaction. Does that date mean anything? I pulled up my phone calendar and scrolled back. April 17th, Thursday evening. My stomach tightened. That was the night Solène came to our home for family dinner. I remembered because Ronan had been nervous, wanted everything perfect, wanted his fiancée to feel part of the family. She'd arrived with flowers, stayed for 3 hours, and at some point between the main course and dessert, she'd started crying. Not dramatic sobbing, quiet tears that she tried to hide. Ronan had taken her hand, asked what was wrong, and she'd said she just wanted stability, wanted a real partnership, wanted to know she was building something that would last. I'd thought it was vulnerability, thought it was a woman scared of commitment, working through her fears. But that night, while she wiped away tears and talked about wanting security, someone had executed a $47 test transaction against my son's accounts. Her tears were reconnaissance. Her tears were reconnaissance. Every intimate family dinner was an intelligence operation, and now I needed to see what legal justification they'd manufactured to make it all legitimate. The document claiming I was mentally incompetent sat on Kingsley's screen in perfect legal formatting, and I knew instantly it was a lie. Power of attorney, Kingsley said. Claims you suffered a stroke, requiring immediate family intervention. I leaned closer. Legal letterhead from a Georgetown firm I'd never heard of. My signature at the bottom, clear as day, except I'd never signed it. And I'd never had a stroke. Medical emergency necessitating transfer of financial authority to your son. Kingsley continued. The bank accepted it as legitimate authorization. Once Ronan had emergency control, and Solène had joint ownership of the wedding account, she could move money through both access points. I studied the signature. Someone had done their homework. The capital V, the flowing Hampton, the terminal period. But the details betrayed it. Look at the tail on my N, I said. Mine curves left from Army field training. This curves right. Too perfect. Kingsley zoomed in, comparing it to my actual signature on file. The differences emerged. Pen pressure too consistent. Angle variations too subtle. The natural hesitations that come from living in a body for 59 years, completely absent. Professional forgery, he said. Someone studied your signature for weeks. Someone had studied my signature like a graduate thesis, practicing until they could forge my identity with bureaucratic precision. But here's the vulnerability, Kingsley continued. Power of attorney requires a witness. Someone had to sign this document claiming they observed you executing it. He scrolled down to the witness section. Carmela Riddle. Licensed notary seal next to the signature. Dated April 29th, Georgetown. Who witnessed this? I asked. Carmela Riddle. Licensed notary. I pulled out my phone and opened the wedding planning emails. Carmela Riddle was the primary coordinator on every contract. Catering, venue, flowers. She'd positioned herself as the central node for every financial transaction. That's the wedding planner, I said. And look, same last name as Solène. Kingsley ran a social media cross-reference. Family photos appeared on screen. Solène and Carmela at holidays, vacations, birthdays, tagged as cousins in multiple posts. First cousins, Kingsley said. My son thought he was marrying into a family. He was being harvested by one. I scrolled through the wedding vendor master list. Every contract photography, videography, transportation, accommodations listed Carmela as coordinator. The catering deposit paid through Carmela. Venue advance coordinated by Carmela. Band retainer processed by Carmela. She'd positioned herself as the financial gatekeeper for a celebration that was actually cover for systematic theft. And she'd done it while notarizing a legal document claiming I was incompetent. This wasn't just Solène working alone, I said. This is coordinated family operation. Kingsley nodded. Blood conspiracy. Solène as the inside operator. Carmela as the legal facilitator. both positioned months in advance. I stared at Carmela's notary seal on the forged document. She'd sworn under oath that she'd witnessed me sign papers I'd never seen. She'd weaponized her legal credentials to authenticate fraud. Every vendor contract, catering, flowers, venue, photography, listed Carmela Riddle as coordinator. She'd positioned herself as the financial gatekeeper for the entire wedding operation, while simultaneously witnessing the forged legal document that justified the theft. The wedding wasn't just cover for theft, it was infrastructure. Carmela had built herself into every payment channel, every authorization flow, every financial touchpoint. From her position as wedding planner, she could track money movement, coordinate timing, and provide legal legitimacy through her notary credentials. Solène and Carmela weren't just accomplices, they were blood. The conspiracy runs through family lines. A family conspiracy meant coordination, communication channels, real-time intelligence sharing. And the best way to map a network is to send a signal through it and watch where it goes. I walked into the enemy's operational base, carrying a lie designed to expose the truth. The Potomac Riverside Resort sat on manicured grounds that cost more per hour to maintain than most people earned in a month. Inside the main event hall, vendors transformed space into wedding venue florals, lighting, chair arrangements, and at the center of it all, directing the operation with clipboard and headset, stood Carmela Riddle. She was 27, Solène's cousin, and she moved through the resort with the confidence of someone who thought they'd already won. Wedding planner on the surface, co-conspirator underneath. And now, my test subject. "Mr. Hampton," she said when she spotted me, professional smile clicking into place. "I wasn't expecting you today." "Is everything all right?" "Just wanted to check on the arrangements," I said, playing the concerned father role I'd rehearsed on the drive over. "I know things are complicated with Ronan right now, but I do have a protected account that might help with costs." Her expression shifted, interest, trying to hide behind concern. "That's very generous. Mr. Hampton, what kind of account?" "Family trust at a different institution, about $180,000. Protected from yesterday's situation." I let worry color my voice. The worried father who just wants the wedding to happen despite everything. "It's at a smaller private bank, completely separate from the accounts that were compromised." "I see." She made a note on her clipboard, but I watched her pupils dilate slightly. Predator recognizing fresh prey. "That's very thoughtful. I'm sure Ronan will be relieved to know there are still resources available." "Well, we're family," I said. "These things happen. We adapt." The best traps look like gifts, and the best lies contain just enough truth to taste real. I excused myself, needed to check something in my car. "Be right back," and positioned myself in the lobby with clear sightline to the event hall. Settled into a chair with coffee, pulled out my phone, and started the clock. In intelligence work, truth is patient, but lies move like wildfire. If Carmela was the pipeline between me and Solène, the call would happen fast. Valuable information doesn't wait. 15 minutes passed. I watched Carmela coordinate with the florist, discuss something with the lighting tech, check her tablet twice. Normal wedding planner behavior. Maybe I'd miscalculated. Maybe the network wasn't as tight as I thought. Then she stepped away from the vendors, phone to her ear, turning her back to the room. There it is. The call lasted 90 seconds. Too short for casual conversation, too quick for anything except intelligence transfer. She was animated, gesturing even though the person on the other end couldn't see her. When she hung up, she glanced around the room like she was checking if anyone had noticed. I had. Information in criminal networks moves like blood through an organism. Watch where it flows, and you map the anatomy. I stayed in the lobby, tracking time on my phone. Ronan was at home, probably still processing his financial devastation, trying to figure out how to rebuild from zero. I'd installed family tracking on his phone years ago, concerned father protocol, that he'd never bothered to disable. 20 minutes after my conversation with Carmela, Ronan's phone registered activity. I opened the remote view. Text message from Solène. My jaw tightened as I read it. Your dad mentioned a protected account. What's the account number at the other bank we should use? That instead of selling the house. 20 minutes and 14 seconds from deployment to penetration. Carmela had transmitted my fabricated intelligence to Solène faster than most people return emails, and Solène had immediately pivoted strategy, already calculating how to access this new, fictional resource. The protected account didn't exist. The separate bank was fiction. The $180,000 was bait, but they'd swallowed it whole. And now I had proof of real-time coordination between the cousins. Solène wasn't in hiding. She wasn't running scared. She was actively hunting for more assets to drain, coordinating with her cousin, operating like the conspiracy was still live. The cousins communicate in real-time coordination. Real-time coordination meant visual evidence existed somewhere. Hotels recorded everything. Digital surveillance never lies. And I needed to see exactly who stood in that hallway 55 minutes before my son's life imploded. Marcus Donnelly was the hotel's head of security and a former Secret Service agent. He pulled up the digital archive in the basement security office without asking questions. I need footage from last night, May 6th, between 10 and midnight, I said. Administrative wing or public areas? Both. I'm looking for my son's fiancée and the wedding planner, and anyone they shouldn't be meeting. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Multiple camera angles appeared. Wedding party was in the presidential suite. Most activity around the ballroom. Try administrative areas, service corridors, anywhere guests don't normally go. He switched feeds. Maintenance hallways, kitchen access, then stopped on a restricted corridor near document processing. Got something. 10:52 p.m. There. Clear as a prosecution exhibit. Solène walked into frame first, followed by Carmela. Business casual, purposeful stride. They stopped at the corridor intersection and waited. 30 seconds later, a man in a dark suit appeared, carrying a leather portfolio. I'd never seen him before. Can you enhance him? I asked. Marcus zoomed the feed. Mid-30s, professional appearance, expensive suit. He shook hands with both women briefly, transactional. Carmela showed him documents. He pulled papers from his portfolio and handed them over. 8 minutes total. Then they separated. Different directions. Cameras don't forget. And criminals always underestimate how much their body language confesses. That look like a wedding consultation? I asked. Marcus shook his head. Deal closing. And that man isn't registered as a guest. Can you pull stills? Marcus exported frames. Opened enhancement software. The image sharpened. Professional haircut. No wedding ring. Confident posture of someone who'd done this before. Then I saw it. Zoom his left wrist. The image expanded on a distinctive blue band. Not a watch, not a bracelet. That's a VIP lounge pass from Reagan National, Marcus said. Blue band means international departure access, same-day premium lounge privileges. He came straight from the airport, or was heading there. Those bands expire when your flight boards. He was wearing active authorization. I stared at the enhanced image. The man who'd met with Solène and Carmela 55 minutes before the theft had been wearing proof of imminent departure. Not planning to leave. Already checked in. Already through security. Already cleared for international travel. He walked into that meeting wearing his boarding pass like a soldier wearing dog tags before deployment. Can you determine which airline? I asked. Band color suggests Star Alliance, United or Lufthansa most likely. I'd need airport security cooperation for the manifest. I photographed the screen. Unknown male accomplice. Leather portfolio. VIP lounge band. Timestamp 10:52 p.m. This wasn't opportunistic crime. This was military-grade extraction planning. The man had his escape flight booked before he helped execute the theft. Same-day international departure with premium lounge access meant he'd already cleared preliminary security, already had boarding credentials, already knew exactly when he'd be wheels up and beyond jurisdiction. Solène and Carmela hadn't just recruited help. They'd hired a professional. Marcus leaned back in his chair. That wristband. It's issued at check-in for flights departing within 12 hours. This guy walked into your son's rehearsal venue, wearing proof he'd be out of the country before sunrise. I looked at the timestamp again. 10:52 p.m. The theft authorizations began at 11:47 p.m. 55 minutes between this meeting and financial devastation. 55 minutes for whatever documents they'd exchanged to be deployed. The unknown accomplice hadn't just facilitated the theft. He'd timed his escape down to the hour, booked his flight before the crime even happened, positioned himself to be internationally unreachable before anyone discovered the damage. This was professional money laundering infrastructure, someone who specialized in helping criminals convert assets and disappear across borders. Someone who charged premium rates for same-day extraction services. The conspiracy includes a professional money broker. A professional money broker with a pre-booked international flight meant sophisticated infrastructure, which meant multiple layers. Shell companies, payment mechanisms designed to survive scrutiny, and weddings with their inflated costs and emotional justifications made perfect cover. Money laundering always leaves paper trails, and wedding budgets make perfect cover for moving cash between shell companies. I found Carmela in the venue's event coordination office, reviewing seating charts like the wedding was actually going to happen. She looked up when I entered, professional smile already in place. "I'd like to handle some vendor payments directly," I said. "Help reduce the financial pressure on Ronan after yesterday's complications." Her eyes flickered with something calculation, maybe anticipation. "That's very generous, Mr. Hampton. Let me pull the vendor list." She handed me a 3-page spreadsheet. Custom floral design and installation, $78,000. Premium photography package, $42,000. Videography and editing, $38,000. Catering upgrade, $67,000. Every line item inflated beyond reason. "These are premium services," Carmela explained. "Luxury vendors command higher rates. $78,000 for flowers seems extraordinary, even for premium work." She smiled. "Potomac wedding standards, imported orchids, custom installations, multi-day setup. It's what Solène wanted." I nodded like that explained it, scanning the page while appearing to review payment schedules. Then I noticed the addresses. Elite Floral Designs, P.O. Box 847, Sterling, Virginia. Prestige Photography Services, P.O. Box 847, Sterling, Virginia. Capital Video Productions, P.O. Box 847, Sterling, Virginia. 3 supposedly independent premium vendors sharing an identical post office box in a suburban strip mall. Criminal organizations disguise theft as legitimate expenses because accountants rarely question wedding budgets labeled premium services. "Mind if I photograph this for my records?" I asked. "Of course." I pulled out my phone and captured each page, making sure to get complete contact information. Email addresses jumped out immediately, all using the same domain, luxweddingservices.com. Different company names, identical infrastructure. "These vendors came highly recommended?" I asked. Solène found them through industry connections, all very exclusive. I pulled up my phone's business registry search while pretending to check calendar availability. Elite Floral Designs Incorporated, March 15, 2026, 53 days ago. Prestige Photography Incorporated, March 18th. Capital Video, March 20th. All formed within the same week, all sharing registration details, all listing the same Sterling P.O. box. No web presence beyond placeholder pages. No customer reviews. No business history beyond their incorporation dates. No evidence they'd ever executed a wedding before this one. They weren't vendors. They were accounts. "I'll need to coordinate with my bank," I said. "These amounts require special authorization." "Of course, most deposits are already paid, but the final payments are substantial." "When are finals due?" She checked her spreadsheet. "Florist and photographer within 48 hours of the event. Videographer and caterer day of. Standard luxury vendor terms. I photographed the payment schedule, noting the timing. They'd structured it so major funds transferred right before the wedding, right before they disappeared. They'd built a pipeline disguised as a celebration, with my son's name on the invoices and their accounts on the receiving end. I appreciate your help with this, I said, moving toward the door, then stopped like something occurred to me. The florist invoice. There's a handwritten note here. What does this mean? I showed her the screen. She leaned in to read it. Custom arrangement installation, $78,000. In the payment terms section, barely legible handwriting. Second payment after flight. Oh, that's just internal vendor notation, Carmela said quickly. They have multiple delivery schedules. But I'd seen her face in the half-second before she answered. Recognition. Concern that I'd noticed. The note wasn't about delivery schedules. It was about payment distribution. The vendors, these fake companies with no history, were designed as deferred payment mechanisms. The conspirators had structured the theft to collect remaining funds after reaching their international destination. First payment during the theft. Second payment after safe escape. The wedding budget is the extraction payment schedule. The vendors weren't just fake. They were payment infrastructure for international escape, which meant Solène had planned this extraction for months, maybe longer, and my son needed to understand that the woman who promised to love him had actually been hunting him like prey. I found Ronan sitting in the hotel lobby, staring at nothing. I took him to a private balcony overlooking the Potomac, where the evening darkness would hide whatever came next. Son, I need you to tell me everything. When did Solène learn about your financial problems? He looked at me like I'd struck him. What? I laid out the evidence. Forged power of attorney, shell companies, test transactions dating back weeks, security footage, the fake vendors with their payment after flight notation. Every piece of the conspiracy I'd documented in the past 18 hours. His face drained of color. You've been carrying debt, I said. Hidden debt. And Solène knew about it. His shoulders sagged. The confession came out broken, ashamed. I lost $420,000 on a property flip 2 years ago. Leveraged everything on a commercial development that fell through. I've been buried ever since. When did she find out? First month we were dating. I tried to hide it, but she noticed I was stressed. I thought she'd leave when she knew. His voice cracked. Instead, she said we'd fix it together, that her family had resources, that once we were married, we could leverage the Hampton assets to recover my losses. Together, I said. By stealing $3.8 million from your family. No, that's not. He stopped, looked at the evidence spread between us. She wouldn't. But his voice lacked conviction. Financial predators don't find victims by accident. They research, identify vulnerability, then engineer the perfect meeting that feels like fate. How did you meet her? I asked. He blinked like the question was irrelevant. Open house. High-end development I was showing in McLean. She was there looking at properties. Said she loved my approach to luxury real estate. We talked for 2 hours after everyone else left. What month? September 2024. I pulled up my phone, ran a quick timeline. His death occurred in April 2024. Solène appeared 5 months later at a property showing where he worked. Not a random intersection, a researched target. She wasn't shopping for property. Son, she was shopping for you. I opened the social media archive Kingsley had pulled, scrolled back to March 2024, 6 months before their meeting. Their public post from a networking event. Solène standing with a group of professionals, wine glass in hand. Caption visible. Alternative Investment Strategies Seminar. Learning to identify opportunities in distressed assets. Hashtag financial growth. Hashtag networking. Goals. I showed Ronan the screen. Distressed assets, I said. That's what they call people with debt they can exploit. 6 months before she walked into your open house, she was at a networking event, learning how to target people like you. I watched my son's face as the architecture of his destruction became visible. each memory reinterpreted through the lens of manipulation. The debt made you vulnerable, I continued. Made you desperate enough to trust someone who offered solutions. Made you grateful instead of suspicious. She researched your family, identified you as the weak point, learned about your financial crisis, then positioned herself to appear in your life at exactly the right moment. But she loved me, he whispered. All those times, she said, she was working you. Every intimate moment was reconnaissance. Every family dinner was intelligence gathering. Every tear was performance. His hands were shaking. When did she ever actually love me? I pulled up another archived post. Solène, at the same financial networking event. Different angle, different photo. The seminar agenda visible on a projector behind her. Session 3, Leveraging Family Trust Structures for Alternative Revenue Streams. She'd attended a seminar teaching financial targeting methodology. 6 months later, she appeared at his property showing. The entire romance was operational planning. Every intimate moment had been reconnaissance. Every family dinner, intelligence gathering. The entire romance engineered from a targeting seminar 6 months before they met. But there was one more violation I needed to document before I had the complete picture. She didn't just steal my wife's jewelry. She violated the vault where Grace's memory rested, hunting for the keys to permanent control. Kingsley pulled up the Georgetown Bank Vault security system on his monitors. Patricia Brennan had provided remote credentials after I explained what we were looking for. The audit logs loaded every access to every box, time-stamped and biometrically authenticated. Box 447, I said. Hampton Family Safe Deposit. Show me May 6th. Kingsley scrolled. The entry appeared 12:03 a.m., May 6th, 2026. Biometric authorization. Solène Riddle. Ronan gave his fiancée access to the family vault, Kingsley asked. Standard practice for engaged couples storing wedding jewelry, I said. She used trust to commit theft. The timing landed like a punch. Midnight, hours before the rehearsal party would begin. While Ronan slept, his fiancée was already executing the first phase of her operation. Can you pull interior footage? Kingsley navigated to the vault camera system. High-definition security cameras captured every angle. Insurance liability for contents worth millions. He queued up the May 6th midnight footage and hit play. Solène appeared on screen, professional as a surgeon. She used Ronan's key and her biometric authorization to access the box, opened it methodically, removed Grace's jewelry first. The sapphire necklace my wife wore on our anniversary, the pearl earrings from her grandmother, the vintage brooch that had been in her family 3 generations. My wife died 8 months ago, and this woman rifled through her jewelry box like she was sorting through garage sale inventory. But Solène didn't leave after taking the jewelry. She pulled out document envelopes next. Trust papers, asset schedules, legal amendments. And then she did something that transformed theft into something worse. She photographed everything. Zoom in, I said. Kingsley enhanced the image. Solène held each document page under the vault light. Phone camera capturing every detail. Original trust structure. Amendment provisions. Asset distribution protocols. She worked through the stack with professional efficiency, photographing fronts and backs, making sure flash illuminated small print. She's building a complete duplicate file, Kingsley said, or a targeting dossier. Everything she'd need to know to execute a financial takeover. Then she reached an envelope she'd already photographed once, looked at it, opened it again, photographed the exterior, then the interior documents, then the exterior from a different angle. Wait, go back. That envelope she keeps returning to. Kingsley replayed the sequence. Solène photographed one particular envelope 5 separate times. Multiple angles, close-ups of the label, detailed captures of the seal and notation. What's it say? I asked. Kingsley enhanced the label. Trust amendment, legal control provisions. Thieves who photograph legal documents aren't planning a one-time theft. They're engineering permanent takeover. I stared at the frozen frame. Solène holding that envelope like it was treasure map. The label, fully visible now in enhancement. Trust Amendment, Legal Control Provisions, Authority Transfer Protocols, 2025. Those documents outlined how trustee authority could transfer, the legal mechanisms for someone to assume control over the entire Hampton family estate, conditions under which a spouse or guardian could take permanent financial authority. She wasn't just stealing jewelry and money. She was documenting the legal architecture to become permanent trustee with authority over everything. Grace's necklaces were incidental valuable, but disposable. The real target was the roadmap to forever. She photographed those provisions 5 times, Kingsley said. Once for each contingency scenario, probably. Marriage, Ronan's incapacity, your death, emergency guardianship. She wanted every pathway to control. I watched the footage replay, Solène carefully returning documents to the box, jewelry already secured in her bag, phone full of legal blueprints. She closed the vault at 12:47 a.m. 44 minutes inside, documenting how to become the Hampton family. Grace's jewelry was the bait. The trust provisions were the prize. She wanted to become the family. She'd wanted to become the family documenting every legal pathway to permanent control. But documentation meant nothing if I could prove she was still hunting, still operating like the conspiracy hadn't been exposed. One more test before tonight's rehearsal dinner confrontation. Dawn broke on the day I would destroy my son's wedding. And I needed one more proof that the predators were still hunting. Ronan sat at the kitchen table looking like he hadn't slept. Which he probably hadn't. I'd been up all night compiling the evidence dossier, every document, every timestamp, every piece of the conspiracy photographed and organized for maximum impact. Tonight, at the rehearsal dinner, I'd detonate it all. But first, I needed to confirm they were still active. I need you to call her, I said. Tell her I'm thinking about selling the lakeside property. He looked at me like I'd asked him to cut off his own hand. Dad, I can't. Hearing her voice after everything you showed me last night. I know it's hard, but I need to prove they're still hunting before I spring the trap tonight. What difference does it make? You already have everything. I need to know if they're still operational or if they've gone to ground. If Solène's hunting new assets, she's confident. Confident people make mistakes. Ronan stared at his phone like it was a weapon. What do I say? Tell her you're trying to salvage the wedding, that I mentioned selling the Lake Barcroft property to cover costs. Keep it casual. Just information sharing between an engaged couple. He picked up the phone with shaking hands. I hit the speaker button so I could hear both sides. Solène answered on the second ring, voice warm as sunshine. Baby, I'm so glad you called. I've been worried about you. I was asking my son to call the woman who'd dissected his heart like a training exercise. And I felt every second of his pain. Yeah, I'm okay, Ronan said, reading from the script I'd written. Dad and I were talking this morning. He's thinking about selling the lakeside place, trying to salvage things financially. Brief pause. The lakeside place, your dad's actually selling it. He mentioned it, said it might help cover wedding expenses. Get things back on track. Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear her mind working through the implications. New asset. Liquid opportunity. Fresh hunting ground. That's really generous of him, she said finally. Is it worth much? I don't know exactly. It's been in the family forever. Probably a couple million at least. Well, if it helps us move forward, that's what matters. I love you. Ronan. Yeah. Love you too. He ended the call and dropped the phone like it was burning him. I started the stopwatch on my watch. Now we wait, I said. If they're still operational. The call comes within 15 minutes. Criminal networks move information like blood through a body when you inject false intelligence. You can watch exactly where it flows and how fast. We sat in silence. Ronan stared at nothing. I watched both our phones and the clock. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. My phone vibrated at 9 minutes 42 seconds. Unknown Virginia number, I answered. Hello, Mr. Hampton. Professional voice, practiced smoothness. My name is Jeffrey Hartwell. I'm calling regarding the Lake Barcroft property. I understand it may be coming available for immediate purchase. I never listed the property, never mentioned my direct number to Solène, never said Lake Barcroft specifically during Ronan's call. He'd only said Lakeside Place. Who gave you this number? I asked. I'm with Exclusive Properties Group. We specialize in discreet sales for families in transition. I was told you might be interested in a quick, private transaction. The conspiracy's asset hunting machinery was still running at full operational speed. Solène had received the bait, processed it, and activated a real estate contact within 10 minutes. Faster than emergency response. Faster than most people returned text messages. They weren't lying low. They weren't scared. They were still feeding on the family. 10 minutes from bait to bite. The conspiracy was still operational, still confident, still hunting my family's assets like nothing had changed, which meant they had infrastructure I hadn't seen yet. And that broker calling about my property was the thread that would show me. The broker waiting by my lakeside property had no idea he was the next thread I'd pull to unravel their entire operation. Jeffrey Hartwell stood by the lake in a tailored suit and nervous energy. Mid-40s, with the practiced smile of someone who made commission on discretion. He extended his hand when I pulled up. Mr. Hampton, thank you for meeting on short notice. I know the timing is sensitive. You said you had an immediate buyer. Yes, though I should clarify I received the inquiry through an asset management company, Riverside Wealth Partners. They represent high-net-worth clients seeking privacy in transactions. I pulled out my phone like I was checking calendar. You've never met the actual buyer. Not unusual for clients at this level. The management firm handles everything. I just facilitate the property evaluation and closing. How did they contact you? Email yesterday afternoon. Said a client needed immediate acquisition of waterfront property. Cash purchase. Minimal inspection. Asked if I had anything available. Yesterday afternoon. Before Ronan's call this morning. Before I'd even deployed the bait. They'd been scouting liquidation options before executing the theft. Do you have their business card? He pulled one from his portfolio. Riverside Wealth Partners, Georgetown address, phone number, corporate logo that looked like every other generic financial firm. I photographed it while Jeffrey walked toward the water, explaining property features I already knew. Then I ran the search. Riverside Wealth Partners Incorporated, 45 days ago. Registered agent, same PO, box in sterling as the fake wedding vendors. Corporate structure, single-member LLC with privacy provisions. No business history. No employees listed. No web presence beyond a placeholder site. Sophisticated theft isn't one transaction. It's a pipeline with multiple collection points, each disguised as legitimate business. I opened the files Kingsley had sent me earlier this morning, cross-referencing every entity connected to the conspiracy. Shell companies, wedding vendors. The hotel footage from Task 3.2 showing the man with the airport wristband. The flight manifest data Marcus had helped me pull. There. Group flight reservation. 4 passengers. Reagan National to Aruba. Departure Friday, May 8th, 11:45 p.m. Tonight. Payment method. Riverside Wealth Partners corporate card. Charge date May 1st, 7 days before the theft. The same company trying to buy my property had booked their escape flights a week before they stole the money. I scrolled through more files. Riverside Wealth Partners appeared again. Wire transfer recipient for the fake florist payment. Authorities signatory on 2 of the wedding vendor shell companies. Listed contact for the Premium Photography LLC. This wasn't just another layer. This was the operational hub. The entity they'd created to move money, book flights, and liquidate assets after they were safely beyond extradition. They'd built a financial assembly line, steal the money, board the plane, liquidate the property, collect the proceeds each step, feeding the next. Jeffrey walked back from the waterfront. It's a beautiful property. I can have an offer letter drafted by this afternoon if you're interested in moving forward. How fast could they close? They mentioned cash deal, minimal contingencies, 2 weeks maximum. 2 weeks. After they'd fled the country, after they'd be unreachable in Aruba or wherever they'd staged their next connection. They'd liquidate my property remotely, collect the proceeds through their shell company, and I'd be left fighting international legal battles while they spent my money. I looked at the flight details again. Departure 11:45 p.m. tonight. 13 3/4 hours from now. 4 passengers. Solène, Carmela, the unknown man from the hotel footage. And who else? They planned to steal his assets, flee the country, then remotely liquidate his property through this shell company while safely abroad. The theft has a timetable. 13 hours until they boarded that flight. 13 hours to stop a conspiracy that had been months in planning, executed by professionals who'd thought of everything, almost everything. Because I had one advantage they didn't know about yet. Kingsley's voice came through the phone speaker like a funeral bell. I'd pulled over by a Potomac River overlook. Couldn't drive while receiving whatever he'd found that made him say, "Call me immediately. Private line only." Father's instinct knew this would hurt. "I'm here," I said. "What did you find?" "Vernon, I've been digging deeper into the trust access logs. There's something you need to know about how Solène got inside the system." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. River current sounds filled the silence between his words. She had authorized access. Kingsley continued, voice clinical but gentle. Ronan granted her trial user privileges 6 months ago. December 20th, 2025. Numb shock flooded through me. He gave her access to the family trust. Trial user status. Read-only privileges for someone considering marriage into a family with complex assets. Common practice for engaged couples. She could view account structures, beneficiary hierarchies, transfer protocols, complete operational architecture, but no transaction authority. December. Same month, the shell companies started incorporating. Same month, she began her reconnaissance operation. My son had handed her the blueprint. He was trying to be transparent, I said, showing her he trusted her. He was proving commitment. She was conducting intelligence gathering. I remembered Ronan at 8 years old, handing me his favorite toy soldier. "For protection, Dad, so you stay safe." Same trusting gesture, same generous heart. The world had just become predatory around it. "Walk me through what she could see," I said. "Everything except transaction capability, balance totals, asset locations, legal entity structures, trust amendment provisions, beneficiary designations." She logged in 47 times over 6 months, spent hours studying the architecture, downloaded. Nothing too smart for that. But she had unlimited viewing time. My Army intelligence training recognized it instantly. Perfect reconnaissance. No forced entry, no hacking alerts, no security breaches. My son had opened the door and invited her to study every vulnerability. She knew exactly which accounts to hit, because she'd spent half a year mapping them, I said. Correct, and she knew which authorization pathways to forge, because she'd studied the legitimate ones. The technical brilliance of it hit me like a weapon. Ronan's gesture of love had become Solène's weapon of destruction. He'd wanted to show her transparency, prove he had nothing to hide, demonstrate trust. She'd used it to architect his complete financial devastation. "There's something else," Kingsley said. "Trial user access doesn't expire automatically. It stays active until revoked." She still has it. Which means you have it too, Kingsley finished. "You're the trust administrator. You can see everything she sees, access everything she accessed. The door your son opened for her is still unlocked." I watched a couple walk their dog along the river path, laughing about something ordinary. Normal Friday morning, while my world collapsed into tactical variables. My son had trusted someone who studied him like an invasion target, had loved someone who treated his vulnerability as opportunity, had given access that was supposed to prove commitment, but instead enabled theft. And now that same access, that same naive, generous, trusting gesture was the tool I could use to stop her. The irony tasted like poison. "Kingsley," I said, watching the river erase its own path, "I need you to teach me how to use that access before Solène knows I have it." Kingsley spent 2 hours teaching me to navigate the trust system my son had opened for his betrayer. Now I understood the architecture, knew what Solène had studied, recognized which questions would expose her insider knowledge. Time to make her prove it herself. I pressed the red record button and watched the waveform flatten into silence before I dialed her number. Kingsley had installed military-grade recording software on my phone after our river conversation. Legal in Virginia, one-party consent state. Every word would be admissible evidence. I just needed her to say, "Enough." I rehearsed the tone while it rang. Conciliatory, concerned father-in-law who wanted to avoid scandal. Army interrogation training applied to family betrayal. Make the suspect feel safe. Then, let them talk themselves into confession. She answered on the second ring. "Vernon, I wasn't expecting your call." "I know things are complicated right now," I said, keeping my voice warm. "But whatever's happened between you and Ronan, we can handle this privately. The family doesn't need scandal." Pause. Calculating. Then, "I appreciate that, Vernon. I never wanted things to get complicated." "Of course not. Nobody does. But we're family, or about to be. We should be able to work through financial difficulties without lawyers and publicity." "That's very understanding of you." Her voice relaxed degree by degree. She believed it. Believed family loyalty would override evidence. Believed I was the old man trying to preserve reputation, rather than the intelligence officer documenting her crimes. "Then let's keep it simple," I said. "I just need to understand where we stand financially, what assets are affected, what we can salvage." "Well, the immediate accounts have been impacted. But surely there are other resources the family can access." "Possibly. The trust arrangements are complex." "Right, the trust. That should provide stability, shouldn't it?" I let silence hang for 3 seconds. Bait deployed. "It depends on various factors, like the quarterly distributions." Her voice carried the warmth of family, the same tone my ex-wife used when lying about the affair. "Those should cover any immediate concerns, right?" There it was. Quarterly distributions. Specific knowledge of trust payout schedules. Information not in any public document. "Possibly," I said. "Depends on the amendment language." "Oh, you still have the latest trust version? The one with the beneficiary update?" I gripped the steering wheel to keep my voice steady. "Latest trust version. Beneficiary update." She was asking about documents she'd never been shown. Changes she had no legitimate reason to know existed. She'd just exposed 6 months of reconnaissance in one casual question. "I'll need to check with the trustee," I said, maintaining the warm tone like we were discussing dinner plans. "There are always multiple versions with these estate documents. But yes, I'm sure we can figure out which revision applies." "That would be so helpful. And Vernon, I really am sorry about all of this. I never wanted Ronan to be in this position." "I know. Let's reconnect before Sunday. We'll work something out." "Perfect. I'm glad we're all on the same page." Vernon, family should stick together. "Absolutely. Talk soon." I ended the call and stopped the recording. 14 minutes, 42 seconds. The red recording dot pulsed like a heartbeat, capturing every syllable of her confession. She'd asked about trust amendments Ronan never mentioned to her. Beneficiary updates she couldn't know existed without the access trail Kingsley had found. Quarterly distribution schedules that weren't discussed in polite conversation. Each question proved she'd studied the trust architecture with operational precision. The question wasn't whether I had evidence anymore. I had her voice asking about documents she shouldn't know existed, discussing provisions she had no legitimate access to, revealing knowledge that could only come from months of unauthorized reconnaissance. The question was what to do with it before Sunday's rehearsal dinner. The wedding venue looked like something from a magazine spread. White columns, manicured gardens, a fountain that probably cost more than my first car. I stood in the marble lobby watching vendors arrange centerpieces, wondering how much of this Solène had billed to my son's accounts. "Mr. Hampton," the voice came from behind a clipboard. A woman in her 50s, with careful posture and wire-rimmed glasses, approached like she was delivering bad news. "I'm Meredith Caldwell. I handle event accounting for the venue." I recognized fear when I saw it. She kept glancing toward the coordinator's office. "Solène hired me 6 months ago," Meredith continued, her voice dropping. "I need to show you something before the rehearsal dinner. Something I should have reported weeks ago." She handed me a manila folder. Inside was a single printed spreadsheet with a file name that made my blood cold. Hampton _final _distribution V3.XLSX. "I found it in a deleted email attachment," Meredith said. "The bride's mother sent it by accident to the venue billing address instead of her personal account. When I tried to return it, she offered me $20,000 to forget I'd seen it." "You didn't take it." "I have a son too, Mr. Hampton." I studied the spreadsheet. Standard Excel formatting, professional layout, 3 columns that looked like a business plan. The header read, "Post-Flight Asset Liquidation Schedule." The first column listed account numbers. I recognized them. Ronan's trust, his investment portfolios, even the college fund his grandmother had established. Every dollar he owned, itemized, like inventory. The second column showed withdrawal dates, all clustered around 1 week, July 14th to 18th, 2026. 5 days after the wedding. The third column was titled Distribution Percentage. Before I show you what that distribution column revealed, I need to know you're still following this. Comment 1 if you think Ronan should have seen these red flags earlier. Or comment 2 if even the most careful person couldn't have predicted this level of calculated betrayal. And tell me which warning sign would have changed everything. Quick reminder, names and financial details have been fictionalized. Now, here's what the numbers said. Solène Mercier, 60%. Carmela Roth, 40%. Ronan Hampton, 0%. But it was the annotation in the final row that made my hands shake. Someone had added a comment cell in red text. The kind of note you leave for collaborators in a shared document. Next to Ronan's name, cover story only. I read it 3 times. 4. The words didn't change. My son wasn't a victim in this conspiracy. He was the scapegoat, the fall guy, the narrative they'd sell to federal investigators when the money vanished and the fraud unraveled. "There's more," Meredith said quietly. "The next tab." I clicked to the second worksheet. Timeline _post_departure. July 19th. Ronan discovers accounts empty. July 19th. Ronan contacts bank's recorded lines. July 20th. Anonymous tip to FBI, trust fund fraud. July 21st. Media leak. Disgraced heir steals family fortune. July 22nd. S+C arrive Cayman Islands. New identities. They'd scripted his destruction like a movie production schedule. Every phone call he'd make, every authority he'd contact, they'd already weaponized it. By the time anyone investigated, Solène and Carmela would be sipping cocktails under assumed names, while my son faced federal prosecutors. "Why show me this?" I asked. Meredith's expression hardened. "Because Carmela came to the venue yesterday. She asked me to prepare a final invoice, $73,000 for the reception. She wants it billed to your son's account on July 18th, the day before he discovers he's broke. The day before he's framed for stealing his own inheritance," Meredith corrected. "She's building evidence. Every charge, every transaction, it's all designed to make him look guilty." The spreadsheet sat in my hand like a death warrant written in Excel formulas. Solène and Carmela had planned this for months. Steal everything, flee internationally, leave Ronan holding federal fraud charges in an empty house. My son wasn't just losing money, he was being framed for the theft of his own inheritance. My son was watering the tomato plants when I arrived to destroy his world. Ronan stood on the back porch in worn jeans and an Old Navy t-shirt. 31 years old, with his mother's gentle eyes and my stubborn jaw. A public health program manager who'd spent his life helping people. Now about to learn his fiancée had weaponized his kindness. He looked peaceful, 3 days from a wedding that would never happen. "Hey, Dad." He smiled, setting down the watering can. "Just making sure these survive while we're on honeymoon." The manila folder felt like lead in my hand. "Son, we need to talk. Now." Something in my voice killed his smile. He followed me to the porch table. I spread the documents between us like crime scene photos. "Solen established 4 shell companies in December," I said. Military briefing voice. The only way I could get through this. "Same month you gave her trust access." Ronan stared at the incorporation papers. "Dad, what are you talking about? This is some mistake. I have recordings, flight reservations, bank documents. It's not a mistake." I laid out the transfers. 200,000 in January, 300 in February. Flight manifest to Grand Cayman, July 15th. 2 passengers, not 3. He picked up the manifest. His hands shook. "There's more," I said quietly. I showed him the payment spreadsheet, the one Meredith Caldwell had risked her career to give me. Solen Mercier, 60%. Carmela Roth, 40%. Ronan Hampton, 0%. His finger traced the red annotation next to his name. "Cover story only," he whispered. "What does that mean?" "Watching your son's heart break in real time is worse than any combat I survived. It means you were never getting on that plane. She marked you expendable in red ink, son. You weren't part of the escape. You were the explanation for it. She loves me." But even as he said it, I watched him calculate the timing, her mother's sudden involvement. "She wouldn't." I have the timeline. I showed him the worksheet. July 19th, you discover empty accounts. July 20th, anonymous FBI tip. July 21st, media leak. By then, Solen and Carmela are drinking cocktails under new names, while you're facing federal fraud prosecutors. He stood up too fast. The chair clattered backward. "We call it off. Cancel everything. I never see her again." "No." The word stopped him cold. "We let them come," I said. "Let them walk into that rehearsal dinner Sunday night. Let them toast and celebrate. Then we end it publicly, with witnesses, with evidence, with nowhere to run. You want me to sit through dinner pretending I don't know. I want you to protect what they tried to steal. If you cancel now, they scatter. Money disappears. Evidence gets destroyed. They regroup and try this on someone else's son. But if you give me 36 hours, 36 hours of looking at her acting like the man she thought she could destroy." I interrupted. "This will be the hardest thing you've ever done, but it's how we make sure they face consequences." He turned away, gripping the porch railing. His shoulders shook. "How do I look at her and not—" "You think of every lie she told," I said. "Every manipulation. Every time she made you doubt yourself while planning your destruction, and you use it." I was teaching my boy to weaponize his own grief. The cruelest lesson a father could give. "Answer the phone when she calls." I continued. "Confirm dinner details. Smile like a groom should. For 36 hours, your heartbreak becomes strategy." Ronan nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. His phone buzzed on the porch table, Solen's name lighting up the screen with a heart emoji. He looked at me, then at the phone, his hand shaking as he reached for it. The performance had begun. The jazz quartet was already playing when we walked into my son's carefully orchestrated destruction. The Potomac Riverside Resort glowed with candlelight. 50 guests mingling beneath chandeliers. Ronan's hand gripped my arm too tight, knuckles white. "I don't know if I can do this," he whispered. 2 hours, then it's over. Hold the line. He nodded. The smile he manufactured looked like it hurt. Solène appeared through the crowd like she'd been waiting for her cue. Wine-colored dress, diamonds at her throat, radiant bride performance, flawless. She kissed Ronan's cheek, met my eyes with warmth that would have fooled anyone who didn't know she'd marked my son expendable. Vernon, I'm so glad you're here. Tonight means everything to us. Perfect timing indeed, I said. Carmela Riddle moved through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of a wedding planner who'd orchestrated 100 celebrations 35 years old. Solène's cousin, and the logistical architect behind a theft disguised as matrimony. She adjusted centerpieces, directed waiters, checked her watch with the confidence of someone whose exit timeline remained undetected. The family is finally all together, Carmela said. Joining us. Perfect timing, I repeated. Roasted garlic and rosemary drifted from the kitchen. Crystal clinked. Guests found their seats, performing roles in a celebration built on fraud. They celebrated like hunters over fresh kill, not realizing the prey had already called for backup. Then, I saw him. Derek Sutherland stood near the bar, nursing whiskey with the casual confidence of someone who believed his role as international. Travel facilitator remained undetected. The man from the bank security footage. Now playing honeymoon consultant. Mid-40s. Expensive watch. Smooth competence that made wealthy people trust him with complicated logistics, including fleeing the country with stolen assets. Solène guided us toward him. Vernon, this is Derek Sutherland. He's been invaluable with our international arrangements. Just ensuring everything goes smoothly for the happy couple, Derek said, extending his hand. I shook it. Firm grip. Direct eye contact. No recognition that I'd identified him from security footage entering 3 different banks. I appreciate anyone who helps my son travel safely. Derek smiled. That's exactly what I do. So the conspiracy ran deeper than Solène and Carmela. They'd hired a professional someone who specialized in international disappearances requiring new identities, untraceable flights, offshore access, the kind of expertise that left a wider evidence trail. Dinner proceeded like theater. Wine flowed. Someone toasted the beautiful couple. May your future be everything you planned, the guest said. Solène's smile could have lit the room. Oh, it will be. Trust me. Across the table, she and Carmela exchanged a glance. Brief. Knowing. The kind conspirators share when everything's going according to schedule. Derek positioned himself near the exit, calculating escape routes by habit. Ronan sat beside Solène, mechanically cutting his salmon, responding with one-word answers. She touched his hand affectionately, whispered something that made him nod. Performance layered on performance. My son playing ignorant groom while his fiancée played devoted bride, neither aware I was cataloging every interaction as evidence. My hand found the folded evidence printouts in my jacket pocket scripture for the sermon I was about to deliver. Between courses. Solène stood. The room quieted. Before dessert, I have a special request. Her voice carried practiced warmth. Vernon, we'd be honored if you'd share a blessing for Ronan and me, a father's wisdom for our new beginning. Applause rippled through the guests. Expectant faces turned toward me. Of course, I said. I have quite a bit to say about new beginnings. Solène beamed. Perfect. Everyone, let's hear from the father of the groom. More applause. Ronan's eyes met mine, terrified, hopeful, trusting me to end this. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of every document in my pocket, every recording on my phone, every betrayal I'd cataloged over the past 36 hours. Solène smiled at me like I was about to bless her future. I want to talk about trust, I said, and watched Solène's smile widen like I'd already blessed her. The microphone felt solid in my hand. 60 faces turned toward me with the expectant warmth people bring to sentimental father speeches. Solène settled back in her chair, champagne glass raised. Carmela checked her phone briefly, probably confirming tomorrow's flight reservations. When two people build a life together, they build it on trust. I continued, keeping my voice measured. On the belief that the other person values what you value, protects what you've worked to build. Nods around the room. Someone murmured agreement. My son has always been a trusting person. Too trusting, maybe. I looked at Ronan. He sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. He believes the best of people, gives them access to things others would guard more carefully. Selene reached over and squeezed Ronan's hand, playing devoted fiancé to perfection. But trust is a weapon when placed in the wrong hands, I said. A key that opens everything you've built so someone else can take it. The room shifted slightly. A few guests exchanged glances. Some people see love as opportunity, I continued. Marriage as cover story. They understand the mechanics of trust, how to earn it, how to exploit it, how to disappear with what it gave them access to. Solene's smile faltered, just slightly. They register shell companies in December, 4 of them, Delaware and Cayman Islands. They request trust account access for wedding planning and use it for reconnaissance instead. They book international flights, careful to buy tickets for 2, not 3. Carmela's phone clattered onto the table. Several guests turned to look at her. I watched understanding dawn across the room in waves, guests realizing this wasn't a blessing, but a prosecution. I spent 36 hours learning about theft disguised as matrimony, I said. About people who mark the man who loves them as cover story only in red ink. About conspiracy that extends beyond bride and wedding planner to include professional escape facilitators. Derek Sutherland stood near the exit, his face carefully neutral, but his hand had moved to his jacket pocket, probably calculating how quickly he could reach his car. Solene Riddle and Carmela Riddle planned to steal $3.8 million, I said, my voice cutting through the room like verdict. They planned to flee internationally on July 15th and leave my son facing federal fraud charges for the theft of his own inheritance. This is insane. Solene stood, her chair scraping backward. Color drained from her face. Vernon, what are you? I'm exposing a conspiracy, with evidence. Gasps rippled through the guests. Carmela gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Ronan remained seated, performing shocked ignorance perfectly. The groom, learning his fiancée's betrayal in real time, just like everyone else believed. You have no proof, Solene said, but her voice cracked. This is grief talking. Your wife died, and you're projecting. I have recordings. I interrupted. Documentation, bank transfers, flight manifests, payment spreadsheets showing Ronan's allocation at 0% marked expendable by the woman who claimed to love him. The room went silent. Someone's fork clinked against a plate, sharp and sudden in the quiet. I recorded a phone call 2 days ago, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket slowly, letting the weight of the moment build. Solene calling me, asking about the latest trust version, about beneficiary updates she had no legitimate reason to know existed. Solene's face transformed denial to panic recognition in 3 seconds. You can't, that's illegal. Virginia is a one-party consent state, I said. I can record any conversation I'm part of, and I was very much part of this one. The jazz quartet had stopped playing. I connected my phone to the venue's sound system. The Bluetooth paired with a soft chime that echoed through the speakers. Solene took a step backward. Carmela stood, eyes darting toward the exit, where Derek had already disappeared. Let's listen together, I said. My finger pressed play. And Solene's voice filled the room through the venue speakers, friendly, confident, asking about the latest trust version she had no legitimate reason to know about. 60 witnesses heard her confession begin. Solene's recorded voice asked about beneficiary updates that didn't exist in any public document, and the room understood what I already knew. The recording continued through the speakers. 14 minutes of Solene discussing trust structure details she'd accessed through my son's naive gesture. The quarterly distributions should cover immediate concerns, right? her recorded voice said. My voice responded, depends on the amendment language. Oh, you still have the latest trust version, the one with the beneficiary update. Liv Solène stared at the floor, face drained. Carmela gripped the table edge. 60 guests watched a woman convict herself in real time. When the recording ended, silence held the room. I connected my laptop to the projector. This is the payment schedule Solène sent her wedding planner. The spreadsheet filled the screen. 3 names under post-flight distribution. Solène Mercier, 60%. Carmela Riddle, 40%. Ronan Hampton, 0%. In red text, cover story only. 0, someone whispered. He was never getting on that plane, I said. He was the explanation for why money vanished. The scapegoat who'd face prosecutors while they fled internationally. Ronan stared at the screen, jaw tight. I clicked to the next slide. Flight 847 to Barcelona, July 15th. 2 seats, not 3. The reservation displayed passenger aliases, passport numbers already registered. And here's your travel consultant. Security footage showed Derek Sutherland entering 3 different banks, accessing my son's accounts without authorization. 60 phones were recording now. This wasn't just family dinner anymore. It was documentary evidence for federal prosecutors. Carmela stood abruptly. We need to leave. Now. But Solène wasn't running. Cornered predators attack. Ronan gave me that access. Her voice cracked sharp with desperation. He signed the authorizations. He gave me permission to manage the accounts. Gasps around the tables. Some guests glanced at Ronan with new suspicion. Check the documents, Solène continued, pointing at him. His signature is everywhere. He knew what I was doing. He's as guilty as anyone. She was weaponizing his trust, making naivete look like complicity. I waited. Let the accusation hang. Yes, I said quietly. Let's talk about what my son signed. I pulled the trust amendment from my jacket. Official document, notarized and filed. Ronan signed trust access 6 months ago as gesture of love, I said. I signed trust amendment 48 hours ago as act of protection. Solène's eyes widened. Every outside authorization was revoked. Transfer capabilities frozen. Dual signature requirements implemented. Every transaction attempted after Wednesday noon was automatically rejected. The room went silent. She still thought she'd won. You attempted 3 transfers Thursday morning, I said. 500,000, 800,000, 1.2 million. All rejected within 60 seconds. You have $0 of Hampton money. That's impossible, Solène whispered. The transactions went through. You checked a test environment Derek created to make you think you'd succeeded, I said, while I collected evidence of attempted theft. 6 months of conspiracy. $0 acquired. 60 witnesses recording your confession. Carmela sank back into her chair. The shell companies, I continued, reported to federal authorities Wednesday. Flight reservations, flagged with TSA. Bank access, documented as unauthorized intrusion. You built a perfect conspiracy that netted nothing except your own prosecution. Solène's face collapsed from rage to comprehension. She'd spent 6 months planning a theft that netted $0, framed a man for fraud that never occurred, and exposed her conspiracy to 60 recording witnesses for nothing. The trap wasn't just sprung. The amendment did more than freeze your access, I said, watching comprehension spread across her face like poison. Solène stood frozen at her table, guests' phones still recording, the weight of her failed conspiracy settling like concrete. It included forensic logging protocol. I continued. Every access attempt after Wednesday noon was recorded. Timestamp, IP address, Ds1D, geographic location. Every keystroke documented as evidence. Her eyes widened. Every time you used Ronan's credentials after my amendment, the system logged it as unauthorized fraud, I said. 47 access attempts over 36 hours. Each one timestamped and geolocated. Each one a separate federal offense. You turned the trust into a trap, Solène whispered. I turned it into a prosecution. I corrected. I pulled up the access log on the projector. Clean columns of data. Digital evidence that couldn't be argued with. Thursday, 11:47 p.m. Unauthorized access from Solen's home IP address. Attempted to view quarterly distribution schedule. Solen's face drained. Friday, 9:23 a.m. Carmela checking liquid asset balances from coffee shop Wi-Fi on King Street. Attempted transfer authorization to Shell Company account. Carmela stood abruptly. This is entrapment. You can't. Friday, 2:17 p.m. Derek Sutherland, attempting withdrawal approval from Hotel Business Center. Used Ronan's administrator credentials without authorization. Derek's hand tightened around his glass. Each attempt generated automatic fraud alert, I said. Each alert sent to bank security and copied to the forensic log I established, specifically to document your crimes. You were spying? Solen's voice cracked. That's illegal surveillance. I'm the trust administrator, I said calmly. Monitoring access attempts is my legal obligation. You committed federal wire fraud using stolen credentials. I documented it. They'd built their own cage, one access attempt at a time. And I'd simply locked the door. Wire fraud, I continued, counting on my fingers. Identity theft, attempted grand larceny, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, computer fraud and abuse. The forensic log documents every violation with timestamps that match your devices, your locations, your digital fingerprints. Carmela gripped the table edge. We had authorization. Ronan gave us. Ronan gave access 6 months ago. I revoked it 48 hours ago. Every subsequent use became criminal trespass of protected financial systems. The room watched in silence. 60 witnesses seeing the difference between naive trust and prosecutable fraud. But how did you know we'd keep trying? Solen's question came out broken. Because you thought you'd won, I said. Because Derek told you the transfers were pending. Because Carmela confirmed the flight reservations. Because all three of you believed my son was the fool, and you were the professionals. Derek moved toward the exit. 2 steps. I contacted the FBI Financial Crimes Unit Thursday morning, I said. His steps stopped. Provided recordings, documents, forensic logs, complete evidence package. Investigators have been monitoring this situation for 36 hours, awaiting my signal. The color drained from Derek's face. Then why wait? His voice came out hoarse. Why this public circus? Because you needed to know you were caught before you tried running, I said. Because 60 witnesses needed to hear the truth. Because my son deserved public vindication, not private resolution. Solen looked at the exits. Carmela's hand found her phone. Derek calculated distances like the professional escape facilitator he was. The venue doors opened. Special Agent Julia Kerrigan walked through with the calm authority of someone who'd arrested 100 white-collar criminals and knew exactly how this one ended. FBI Financial Crimes Unit, carrying federal warrants Vernon had helped build. Special Agent Michael Torrens followed his partner with handcuffs ready and Miranda card visible. 20-year veteran of financial fraud cases who'd reviewed my evidence package and recognized prosecutorial gold. Solen Riddle, Carmela Riddle, Derek Sutherland, FBI. Agent Kerrigan's badge reflected the chandelier light. We need you to come with us. We have rights, Solen said. We have lawyers. You can't just... You have the right to remain silent. Agent Torrens interrupted. I suggest you use it. Handcuffs clicked shut with metallic finality. Miranda rights echoed through the silent venue. Solen's wrists disappeared behind her back as Agent Kerrigan read Miranda rights to a woman who'd planned 6 months for freedom. And gotten federal custody instead. Carmela and Derek followed in handcuffs. The travel consultant who'd booked international flights now facing domestic prosecution. The venue that had smelled like catered salmon and champagne now carried the administrative tang of federal custody. Agent Kerrigan moved with practiced efficiency, directing personnel like a conductor. Separate them. No communication until individual statements complete. Solène disappeared into the venue office, still handcuffed, her wine-colored dress a slash of color against gray FBI windbreakers. Carmela went to the kitchen, mascara streaking her face. Derek Sutherland walked to the coat room between two agents, his professional confidence finally cracked. "Secure all electronic devices," Agent Torrens ordered. "Phones, laptops, everything." More agents arrived. Evidence bags appeared. Cameras flashed as they photographed the documents I'd displayed: spreadsheets, flight manifests, access logs, the conspiracy becoming official federal record. I stood near the stage, watching choreographed efficiency transform chaos into procedure. Agent Kerrigan approached, her expression neutral but satisfied. "Judge signed the freeze order an hour ago. All accounts connected to the shell companies locked. Solène and Carmela's personal accounts included." "The Barcelona flight they booked?" I asked. "Cancelled with passenger manifest flagged. Nobody's flying anywhere." She checked her phone. "We've also frozen Derek Sutherland's business accounts internationally. The travel consultancy was shell operation. He's facilitated 6 similar escapes over 4 years. So my son wasn't even their first target, just the most recent mark in a professional operation." Around us, 60 guests processed what they'd witnessed. Some still recording on phones. This would be social media within hours. Others left quietly, glancing back like they'd narrowly escaped something dangerous. A few older couples approached me with words of support I barely heard. The rehearsal dinner had become an autopsy, federal agents dissecting a conspiracy while witnesses watched the precision. Ronan stood alone near the stage, where I'd exposed everything. His face held that blank expression soldiers get after combat shock, protecting the mind from processing too much trauma at once. He watched Solène being led past in handcuffs. She didn't look at him. Guests whispered they were going to frame him. His own fiancée. 6 months planning. Who does that? That father saved his son from federal prison. Public judgment replacing private betrayal. The vindication I'd wanted for Ronan. But watching his face, I wondered if the public exposure hurt worse than quiet resolution would have. Agent Torrens' phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression sharpening. "When? How much cash?" He ended the call and turned to me. "Dulles TSA just flagged someone from your case. Jeffrey Hartwell, real estate broker. The man who set up the property shell companies," I said. "Tried boarding a Lisbon flight 20 minutes ago. $47,000 in cash, 3 fake IDs, falsified travel documents. He's in federal custody now." 4 conspirators, not 3. The network ran deeper than the rehearsal dinner had revealed. Professional facilitators, document forgers, real estate fronts. How many people had studied my son like a target? How many specialists had Solène hired to perfect this theft? Agent Torrens continued. "Hartwell's cooperating already. Gave up 2 more names: accountant who structured the transfers, lawyer who drafted the shell company paperwork. We're looking at minimum 6-person operation. 6 people had conspired to destroy my son's life." I looked at Ronan. He was watching me with an expression I recognized from his childhood. The look he got when he knew adults were hiding something too. "Protect him." He walked over, movements careful, like glass might shatter. "Dad, I need you to stop being gentle with me." "Son, you've been through enough tonight." "That's what I mean." His voice stayed steady, but his hands shook. "Stop sparing my dignity. Stop using words like trusted when you mean fool. Stop saying gave her access when you mean handed a thief the keys." My son wanted the wound cleaned before it could heal. No anesthetic. No mercy. "I need to know how bad it really was," he said. "How stupid I looked. How obvious the manipulation was to anyone who wasn't blinded by..." His voice cracked. "I need the truth, unvarnished, now." He wanted to know everything, every moment of manipulation I'd discovered, every calculated lie Solène had told, every piece of evidence showing how thoroughly she'd studied his vulnerabilities and weaponized his trust. The hardest conversation of my life was about to begin. We stood where the parking lot lights died and the river began. Two men who'd spent 31 years not saying what needed said. The Potomac moved past in darkness, water sounds filling the silence between us. Behind us, FBI vehicles strobed red and blue against the resort walls. Ahead, nothing but black water and distant Maryland lights. Ronan's hands gripped the parking lot barrier, knuckles white. "You said you wouldn't spare me," he said quietly. "So don't." I took a breath. "She studied you for months before you even met. Every vulnerability cataloged." How? Mutual connections, social media, public health sector networks. She knew about your debt before the first date. That wasn't coincidence. His grip tightened on the barrier. She positioned herself at events you'd attend, I continued. Built trust over 6 months. Became the understanding partner when you mentioned financial stress. The trust access request that was the objective from day one. "I thought I was proving I loved her," Ronan said, voice hollow. "You were." She was conducting reconnaissance. The wind off the river carried cold March air. Ronan turned to face me. "She knew everything about the trust architecture within weeks of getting access," I said. "Quarterly distributions, amendment protocols, beneficiary structures, information she used to plan a theft that would leave you facing federal prosecutors while she lived under a new name in Barcelona. How did I not see it?" "Because you loved her. Love makes us blind to evidence our training would catch in strangers." He looked back at the dark water. Minutes passed, river sounds and distant voices from the venue. $180,000, Ronan said finally. "That's my debt. Credit cards, personal loans, trying to look like I had it together. I'd spent 36 hours protecting my son from thieves, but couldn't protect him from the enemy he'd been fighting alone, his own shame. The right apartment, he continued. Right car, right clothes for networking events. You're this decorated intelligence officer, successful businessman. I'm a program manager drowning in debt, trying to pretend I belonged in rooms I couldn't afford to be in. Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because asking would mean admitting I failed." His voice cracked. "You raised me to be independent, self-sufficient. Asking my father to bail me out at 31 felt like admitting I couldn't handle adult life. I'd taught him independence so well, he'd nearly drowned from it. I saw you struggling," I admitted. "Made excuses instead of asking directly. You declined family dinners, avoided conversations about wedding costs, changed topics when finances came up. You noticed. I noticed. I hoped you'd ask for help instead of me pushing. That was my failure." "Why?" "I was proud you never asked for money," I said. "Thought it meant I'd raised you right. That you were strong enough to handle your own problems. It meant I was drowning and too proud to grab the rope." We stood in silence, father and son, acknowledging the pride that had built walls between us. "Can you help me fix this?" Ronan asked. I chose my words carefully. "I'll help you rebuild, but I'm not paying that debt." He turned, shock clear on his face. "I'll connect you with a financial advisor," I continued. "Help you set up debt consolidation, teach you what I know about credit repair and financial planning. But you need to climb out yourself." "Dad, if I write a check, you learn nothing. The debt disappears, but the habits that created it remain. Next crisis, you're right back here." Rescue would be easy. Teaching him to save himself was the harder love. "I'll hold the ladder steady," I said. "But you do the climbing. You negotiate with creditors. You build the repayment plan. You make the sacrifices. That's how you rebuild not just credit, but the confidence Solène destroyed. That could take years, yes. And when you're done, you'll know you did it yourself, not because your father rescued you, because you had the strength to rebuild." He looked at me like I'd refused a drowning man a life preserver, then slowly nodded, understanding the gift I was actually giving. Not money, not rescue. The chance to prove he could rebuild himself. The attorney's office smelled like leather and consequence. 2 weeks of legal machinery, distilled into manila folders on a mahogany desk. Raymond Hollis had handled the Hampton family's estate matters for 15 years, Georgetown attorney specializing in trust recovery and asset protection. Precise as surgery, and twice as expensive. He adjusted his reading glasses, reviewing documents while Ronan and I sat across from him in chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ronan looked different, thinner, older. The boyish optimism that Solène had exploited replaced by something harder and more real. 2 weeks since the FBI arrests, enough time for emergency injunctions to process, for recovery calculations to complete, for the legal machinery to grind conspiracy into documented consequences. Most of what they attempted to take has been recovered or protected, Raymond said, opening the first folder. Most? Ronan's voice stayed level. 600,000 remains temporarily frozen as evidence, standard procedure in federal fraud cases. It'll release when the trial concludes, likely 12 to 18 months. And the rest. Raymond smiled slightly. Your father's trust amendment saved everything that mattered. $3.2 million in targeted assets fully protected. Every transaction the conspirators attempted, reversed, or blocked. Shell companies dissolved, their personal assets seized pending trial. So the family money is safe, Ronan said. The conspirators netted $0, Raymond confirmed. They planned for 6 months, executed for 36 hours, and gained nothing except federal indictments. Protection and consequences aren't opposites. Sometimes the hardest protection is letting someone face what they've earned. Raymond opened the second folder. Your mother's trust was never part of this investigation. Completely separate legal entity. Ronan looked at me, surprise clear on his face. $890,000, Raymond continued, intact and untouched. Your maternal inheritance remained outside the conspiracy architecture entirely. You could have used that to... Ronan started. That's your mother's legacy. I interrupted. Not mine to touch for any reason, not to bait a trap, not to recover losses, not to teach lessons. What your mother left you stays clean. Ronan's eyes went bright. He nodded once, unable to speak. Raymond gave us a moment, then opened the third folder, the one that mattered most. Your current lifestyle is unsustainable given debt load and public health salary, he said gently. The luxury car needs to sell. The Georgetown apartment lease needs termination. You'll need to reduce overhead significantly. I understand, Ronan said. What's the consolidation rate? 6.8% over 5 years. Monthly payment of $3,500. Manageable if you eliminate unnecessary expenses and accept temporary lifestyle reduction. Move back home, I added, until you're stable. Ronan hesitated, pride warring with practicality. Practicality 1. Okay. Raymond slid the final document across the mahogany surface. Debt consolidation agreement. 5 years, $180,000. Personal liability. No parental guarantee. No family bailout. Just consequence and commitment. Sign here acknowledging terms and personal responsibility, Raymond said. Ronan read every line. I watched him process the numbers. 60 months of payments. Lifestyle sacrifices. Professional networking from a smaller apartment. Dating while financially rebuilding. The hard road he'd chosen instead of easy rescue. No cosigner, he asked. You don't need one, I said. You'll do this yourself. His signature was steady. The pen moved across the page with careful precision. Not the signature of someone defeated. The signature of someone rebuilding deliberately, taking responsibility, one legal commitment at a time. Raymond witnessed, notarized, filed the original in his vault. 3 copies remained. 1 for the consolidation company, 1 for Ronan, 1 for family records. First payment due June 15th, Raymond said. Automatic withdrawal unless you specify otherwise. Automatic is fine, Ronan said. I want it paid before I can hesitate. We stood. Handshakes exchanged. Professional courtesies completed. Walking out. Ronan carried his copy of the agreement like a diploma, proof of hard choice made. Responsibility accepted. Growth beginning. Ronan slid the signed agreement back across the desk. 5 years of $3,500 monthly payments stretching ahead like a marathon he'd chosen to run. He'd lost a fiancée, a wedding, and the illusion of easy wealth. But watching him accept that debt without flinching, I knew he'd gained something worth more. The July sun rose over Lake Barcroft the way it always had, but the man making coffee in my kitchen was different from the sun I'd saved 3 months ago. Ronan stood at the counter in khaki slacks and a pressed white shirt, Target brands, replacing designer labels, filling a metal thermos with home-brewed coffee instead of stopping at the espresso bar that used to cost him $40 weekly. His phone sat on the counter, displaying a budget tracking app. Green numbers indicating he'd stayed under spending targets 6 days running. "Coffee's ready if you want some," he said, not looking up. "Made enough for 2. Early start today. Always. Commission doesn't earn itself." He lived in the spare bedroom now, paying me $800 monthly in rent. I deposited straight into a savings account he didn't know existed. Someday I'd give it back as down payment on his first house. But today, he needed to believe he was paying his way. The driveway held a 2015 Honda Civic Practical. Reliable. Paid in cash from selling the luxury sedan he couldn't afford to insure. Budget grocery receipts littered the counter beside library books on real estate law and financial recovery. The expensive hobbies had disappeared. The gym membership canceled. Life stripped to essentials and rebuilding from there. "Made this month's payment yesterday," Ronan said, pouring his coffee. 2 down, 58 to go. "How's the real estate work treating you?" Humbling. Which is probably the point. He smiled slightly. Showing starter homes to couples younger than me. Explaining mortgage rates. I should have understood years ago. Learning that credentials don't matter as much as results. He'd lost a wedding, but married accountability instead. Better vows, harder work, no possibility of divorce. "You gave up the program manager position," I said. He nodded, screwing the lid onto his thermos. "I gave up pretending I could afford that life. Real estate pays commission. I control my income. Work 60 hours, earn more. Work 80 hours, earn more still. That's not what you studied for, no. But pride built that debt. Pragmatism will erase it." He checked his phone, reviewing the day's property showings. Public health credentials look impressive on LinkedIn. Real estate sales pays $3,500 monthly debt plus living expenses. Easy choice. I watched him gather materials, property listings, replacing wedding planning folders, commission goals instead of engagement party RSVPs. 3 months ago, he'd been marrying wealth, living lies, drowning in debt masked by designer appearances. Now he lived honestly in my spare bedroom, worked humbly, selling houses, faced consequences without complaint. The man Solène had tried to destroy was stronger than the boy she'd targeted. "Thanks for letting me stay here," Ronan said, heading toward the door. "Saves $1,800 monthly toward the debt." "Your mother would want you here." He paused, hand on the doorknob. "She'd also want me learning this lesson. So thank you for not making it easier." Grace would be proud of him. Proud of the hard choices. Proud of the humble work. Proud that her son chose character over comfort. Ronan grabbed his briefcase, worn leather. 10 years old. The one thing he'd kept from his previous life because it still worked. "See you tonight. Might be late showing 3 properties after 5. Be safe. Proud of you, son." He stopped, turned, met my eyes. "Thanks, Dad. That means everything." The screen door closed with its familiar creak. His footsteps crossed the porch. The Honda's engine started reliable, unglamorous, honest transportation for honest work. This was what I'd fought for, not to save his money, but to save the man he could become. I watched from the porch as he backed down the driveway. No luxury car, no false status, no elaborate wedding to a woman who'd studied his vulnerabilities like reconnaissance, just steady progress. Character over appearance. Debt payments made on time because he'd chosen to climb out himself. The pride flooding through me had nothing to do with what he owned, and everything to do with who he was becoming. The Honda's taillights disappeared around the lake bend. Carrying my son toward an honest day's work in a life stripped of pretense. 3 months ago, I'd destroyed his wedding to save him from thieves. Watching him now, I knew the greater gift was destroying his illusions. Dawn comes the same way over Lake Barcroft, whether you're planning a wedding or picking up the pieces. Whether you're protecting a fortune or teaching someone what actually matters. I sat where this story began. Porch, coffee, lake view stretching toward Maryland shoreline. Same physical place, same morning ritual. Everything transformed by truth told and consequences faced. 3 months since I'd stood before 60 witnesses and destroyed my son's wedding to save his life. The house still stood. The trust remained intact. Ronan slept in the spare bedroom. Alarm set for 6 a.m. so he could show starter homes to young couples building honest futures. The lake reflected dawn light the way it always had, indifferent to human drama, patient with human recovery. I thought about the people who'd tried to steal from us. Selene Riddle was serving 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud,
Identity theft.
and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. She'd planned 6 months for wealth and freedom. She got a cell in West Virginia and appeals that would go nowhere. Carmela Riddle, 6 years, same facility. The logistical architect who'd orchestrated theft like wedding planning, reducing my son to line item in spreadsheet titled Cover Story Only. Derek Sutherland, 5 years for his role as professional escape facilitator. The travel consultant who'd booked international flights for thieves who'd never board them. Jeffrey Hartwell, 4 years, plus restitution for the shell company infrastructure that made conspiracy look legitimate until it didn't. 4 people, 23 years of combined sentences, $0 stolen, complete failure. The conspiracy had crushed itself against the simple fact that I'd acted faster, thought harder, and loved my son more than they'd calculated. But victory had cost something too. Ronan's wedding canceled. His reputation in certain social circles damaged. His naive trust in love shattered. The public humiliation of learning your fiancé marked you expendable while 60 people watched. Grace used to say, "You can't build a house on quicksand." Turns out, you can't build a family on comfortable lies either. Yet, we'd gained more than we'd lost. Ronan's character, forged in consequence instead of rescue. Father-son honesty, built on truth instead of appearances. A real relationship where we could admit failures, face struggles, help each other without enabling weakness. He'd lost illusions. He'd gained foundations. I'd learned something too. Sitting in the wreckage of a conspiracy that had targeted my family. Wealth doesn't protect people. Truth does. The most dangerous battles don't happen on battlefields. They happen inside homes, when people choose comfortable lies over painful honesty. When fathers see sons struggling, but wait for them to ask instead of asking directly. When sons drown in debt rather than admit they need help. When pride builds walls that thieves can hide behind. Grace's trust had survived not because of the money in it, but because I'd treated it with the respect she'd have demanded, keeping it separate, keeping it clean, refusing to weaponize her legacy even to catch conspirators. Ronan was rebuilding, not from my rescue, but from facing consequences himself. The debt would take 5 years to repay. The character he'd build in those 5 years would last forever. Family doesn't stand on fortune. It stands on truth. The sun cleared the tree line, washing the lake in gold. Somewhere across that water, my son was making coffee in a thermos. checking his budget app, preparing for another day of honest work that would earn him another small piece of freedom from debt he'd created and was destroying himself. What's a wedding worth if the marriage is built on theft? What's protection worth if it prevents someone from growing stronger? What's a father's love worth if it rescues instead of teaches? I'd asked myself these questions 1,000 times since that rehearsal dinner. The answers had come slowly, painfully, honestly. The coffee had gone cold in my hand, but the sun was warm on my face, and somewhere on the other side of the lake, my son was building something real from honest work and hard lessons. I'd exposed a conspiracy, saved a fortune, and protected a family. But the real victory was simpler. I didn't lose my son that night. I finally taught him what a foundation really is. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Protecting someone doesn't always mean shielding them from pain. I made mistakes along the way. I saw my son struggling with debt and waited for him to ask for help instead of offering it directly. Pride kept us both silent. His pride in appearing successful, my pride in raising an independent man. That silence nearly cost him everything. Don't make my mistake. Sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones that save the people we love most. Here's what I learned. Real protection isn't about preventing struggle. It's about equipping someone to face it honestly. When I refused to pay Ronan's debt, I wasn't abandoning him. I was giving him something money can't buy, the chance to prove to himself that he could rebuild. The Lord's timing taught me that the greatest gift a father can give isn't rescue. It's the belief that his son is strong enough to save himself. Wealth creates comfort. Truth creates character. And character is what remains when everything else is stripped away. If this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone and letting them face consequences? Your perspective matters. Please consider sharing this with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to hear more stories about family, truth, and the foundations that really matter. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means more than you know. As a final note, some details in this story have been fictionalized to protect privacy and emphasize the lessons learned. But the core truth about family, trust, and character remains genuine.